stages of power.
France, 1799, 10 years after the storming of the Bastille, 6 years after the guillotine claimed King Louis XIV. The revolution had promised liberty, equality, fraternity. Instead, it delivered chaos, terror, and rivers of blood. Robespierre fell. The Directory stumbled through corruption and bankruptcy. The people were exhausted. The grand experiment seemed on the verge of collapse. Enter Napoleon Bonaparte, the Corsican artillery officer who became a general at 24, the man who brought Egypt to its knees and Italy to the negotiating table. On November 9th, 1799, the 18th Brumaire, in the revolutionary calendar, Napoleon staged a coup d'etat. The Directory fell, the Consulate rose, and France, desperate for stability, barely flinched. They called him the stabilizer, the man who would save the Republic, but history would reveal a darker question. Had France simply traded one monarch for another? As first consul, Napoleon wielded power the Directory could only dream of. But unlike the revolutionaries who came before him, he didn't simply seize power. He rebuilt the nation brick by brick, law by law. In 1800, he established the Bank of France, stabilizing a currency that had become worthless paper. He reformed education, creating the lycée system that still exists today. Tax collection became systematic, roads were repaired, bridges rebuilt. For the first time in a decade, France functioned, but his masterpiece was the law itself. The Napoleonic Code, the civil code of 1804, one legal framework for all of France, replacing the patchwork of feudal customs and regional laws that had governed for centuries. It guaranteed property rights, it confirmed the abolition of feudalism, it established merit over birthright, at least for men. But here, even in this monument to reason, contradictions emerged. Women lost rights they'd held under revolutionary law. Wives became legal dependents of their husbands. The code enshrined patriarchy as much as it did equality. Napoleon was building a meritocracy, but it would be a meritocracy for men, governed by a single authority, his authority. Then came the ultimate paradox. In 1801, Napoleon signed the Concordat with Pope Pius VII. The Catholic Church, enemy of the revolution, persecutor of rational thought, was welcomed back, not as the state religion, but as the religion of the majority of Frenchmen. The revolutionaries had tried to destroy the church, to replace God with reason. Napoleon understood something they didn't. France was still Catholic in its soul, and in one stroke, he gained the loyalty of millions, the approval of Rome, and the appearance of divine sanction. The republic that had guillotined priests now made peace with the Pope, and the architect of this reconciliation positioned himself as the bridge between old and new France, between revolution and order, between chaos and control. In March 1802, Britain signed the Treaty of Amiens. For the first time in a decade, Europe was at peace. France had fought the first coalition, then the second. Now exhausted nations laid down their arms. It wouldn't last, it never does. But for one brief moment, Napoleon stood as peacemaker. France prospered, the economy grew, public works flourished, and Napoleon's popularity soared. He had delivered what the revolution promised but never achieved: stability, prosperity, and peace. The question no one dared ask: what happens when one man becomes indispensable? But stability bred complacency, and in the shadows, enemies plotted. The royalists, those loyal to the executed king's brothers, saw Napoleon as the final obstacle to restoration. In 1803, Georges Cadoudal, a royalist agent, and General Jean-Charles Pichegru, a revolutionary-turned-traitor, conspired to assassinate the first consul. They planned to kidnap him, kill him, and install the Bourbon heir. The plot was discovered, the conspirators arrested, and Napoleon faced a choice: mercy or message. He had shown clemency before, pardoning royalist rebels, welcoming back émigrés, but this was different. This was an attack on the state, an attack on him, and Napoleon believed that power without fear was no power at all. On March 15, 1804, French troops crossed into neutral German territory. Their target, the Duke of Enghien, a young Bourbon prince living in exile. Napoleon believed, or claimed to believe, that Enghien was part of the conspiracy. He was wrong. Enghien had no involvement. But that didn't matter. The Duke was dragged back to France, given a show trial in the dead of night, and executed by firing squad at dawn in the moat of the Château de Vincennes. No appeal, no mercy, a member of royal blood, murdered on Napoleon's orders. Europe recoiled in horror. Even Tsar Alexander of Russia, no friend to revolution, condemned the act as judicial murder. The French diplomat Talleyrand reportedly said it was worse than a crime. It was a mistake. But Napoleon was unmoved. He had sent a message: cross me and lineage will not save you. The age of untouchable aristocracy was over. Yet in killing a prince to protect the Republic, Napoleon revealed his true nature. He was no longer the servant of France. France was becoming his instrument, and those who still believed in the revolution's ideals began to see the truth. The Republic was dying, and Napoleon was writing its eulogy. 2 months after Enghien's execution, another vote, another plebiscite. The question: should Napoleon Bonaparte become first consul for life? The result: 3.6 million in favor, 8,000 against. Whether through genuine support or orchestrated manipulation, France had spoken. The man who staged a coup 5 years earlier now held power indefinitely. The term limits that protected republics were gone. Napoleon was no longer a public servant. He was, in all but name, a monarch. December the 2nd, 1804, Notre Dame Cathedral, Paris, the coronation of Emperor Napoleon I. It had taken months to plan. Artists, architects, tailors, diplomats, all mobilized to create a spectacle that would rival the coronations of Charlemagne and Louis XV. Napoleon understood theater. He knew that power without pageantry was incomplete. Pope Pius VII made the journey from Rome. The same pope who had signed the Concordat now came to sanctify a new dynasty. The revolutionaries who had stormed this very cathedral, who had declared it a temple of reason, were dead or silent. The republic they died for was being buried under ermine and gold. 15 years after the fall of the Bastille, France was crowning an emperor. The moment itself was pure Napoleon. As the ceremony progressed, the Pope prepared to place the crown upon Napoleon's head, the traditional gesture of divine sanction, the acknowledgement that power flows from God. But Napoleon had other ideas. At the crucial moment, he took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. Then, in an act of calculated symbolism, he crowned his wife Josephine as Empress. The artist Jacques-Louis David, once a passionate revolutionary, captured it all on canvas, the former regicide painting the coronation of a new monarch. The message was unmistakable. Napoleon bowed to no one, not to God, not to tradition, not to the Pope, who blessed him. His power came from his own will, his own genius, his own conquest. He was emperor not by grace of God, but by right of achievement. The crown itself told a story, not the ancient crown of French kings that belonged to the old regime. Napoleon's crown was modeled on the laurels of Roman emperors, Caesar, Augustus, the conquerors who transformed republics into empires. Everything about the ceremony married revolutionary ideals with monarchical grandeur. The language spoke of merit and achievement. The imagery declared dynasty and dominion. Napoleon claimed to embody the revolution's promise while building a throne upon its grave. And the French people, exhausted from chaos, accepted the contradiction. Perhaps they even welcomed it. "15 years. That's all it took. 15 years from the execution of Louis XVI to the coronation of Napoleon I. France had torn itself apart to destroy the monarchy. Over 1 million lives lost in revolutionary wars, hundreds of thousands to the guillotine and civil war, the terror, the Vendée, the September massacres, all to kill a king. And now they had an emperor, one who commanded more absolute power than Louis XVI ever dreamed of, one who would wage wars across Europe that would dwarf anything the old monarchs attempted, one who would crown his brothers as kings, marry his family into every royal house that would have them, and create a nobility to rival the aristocracy the revolution had destroyed. Was Napoleon a traitor to the revolution, or was he its inevitable conclusion? Perhaps the truth is simpler. Revolutions don't destroy power, they redistribute it. And in times of chaos, people don't want ideology. They want order, they want safety. They want someone strong enough to protect them from the storm, even if that person becomes the storm. Napoleon gave France stability, he gave them glory, and in return, they gave him everything. The wars were just beginning. The empire would rise to heights unimaginable, and the cost would be measured in millions of lives across a continent. The reverberations of Napoleon's ascent to empire are still felt today. The very foundations of civil law in many European and Latin American nations derive from his civil code. Our modern concepts of centralized governance, meritocracy within the bureaucracy, and even the metric system owe a debt to his reforms. Yet, his story also stands as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between order and liberty, between a nation's desire for stability and the potential for a single individual to amass unchecked power. The French Revolution ignited the flame of republicanism, but Napoleon revealed how easily it could be extinguished, only to be rekindled in different forms across centuries. The myth of Napoleon traitor or savior continues to shape our understanding of leadership, law, and the enduring quest for both freedom and security. Napoleon has his crown, he has his empire, but the monarchs of Europe will not forgive a usurper. They are gathering in the east. Russia and Austria are marching. The diplomat is gone. The emperor must now draw his sword.